This question was asked by a delegate on a recent reporting services course, and as the title of the video suggests, what he wanted to do was show an item in a group header, but only on the first page of each group. So to demonstrate exactly what I mean by that, I've mocked up a basic example of the type of thing he was after. This report is based on our standard movies database, showing a list of films grouped by the certificate awarded to each film. So in the use certificate, there's 4 pages. The header of that group has got some basic aggregations in it, but those aggregations only appear on the first page of the group. As soon as I navigate to the next page, that row disappears. As I move along and get to the start of the next group, because this is the first page of the PG certificate, those aggregations reappear. So that's the basic idea, and this video is going to explain the system that I used to make that work. To get started, I've created a basic report with a data source connecting to our standard movies database. If you want to follow along with the video and use the same data that I'm using here, you can grab a copy of the WiseOwl Movies database from the link in the description on that video. And the video explains how to get that set up. Having connected to that movies database, I've set up a simple data set, and what this does is picks a set of data from the combination of certificate and film tables. So just 5 columns in there. To get started, I'm going to create a basic table that we can then apply some grouping to. So I'm going to start by inserting a table visual into the report. I'm going to populate the detail rows with the title, release date, and runtime minutes fields. Then I'm going to apply some grouping to that table so that I can get them grouped by certificates. To do that, I'm going to right-click on the Details object in the Groups panel, choose Add Group, Parent Group. I'm going to group by the certificate ID, and I'm going to add a group header as well. At that point, I can click OK, and I've got the basic arrangement of data that I want. I think I'd like to reorganize the display of the table, though, a little bit. I'm going to start by deleting the certificate ID column. And then I'm going to insert another couple of rows in the header section of this table. So identifying the header row there, give it a right click, insert row, inside group above. And then I'm going to do that exact same thing again. So I've got 3 rows altogether in the group header. I'm then going to take these column headers that were produced for me automatically and cut them from their top row using Ctrl X, and then paste them in just above the corresponding columns, Ctrl V. I can then get rid of that top row from the table altogether. Then in the very top row, I'm going to first of all merge those cells, assign the certificate field to that, and then finally in the blank row that's left there, I'm going to add a couple of basic aggregations. So above the release date, I'm going to insert the film title, and then select the film title, right click, summarize by, count. And that'll tell me how many films there are. Then above the runtime minutes column, I'm going to choose the runtime minutes, and that will automatically provide me with a sum. And then just to label those a little bit more clearly, I'm going to add some text. So I'm going to add the word count in front of the count of title. And then in front of the sum of runtime minutes, I'm going to add a sum. Okay, a bit of extra tidying up just to make things easier to read. I'm going to make the title column the widest one, because that's going to have the most information in it. I'm going to take my release date data cell, and I'm going to apply some very basic date formatting to that using the text box properties dialog box. And then a little bit of changing of fonts and colors. I'm going to change the background color of some of my cells here so that it's a little easier to see which things belong to the headers and which things don't. So of course you don't need to spend all this time that I'm spending here doing all of this, but it'll make the end result a lot easier to read. Last thing I'm going to quickly do is change the font assigned to all those cells. And then a little bit of bold highlighting for my headers. And I think we're finally there with the absolute basics. Let's give that a quick run, and that's what we've got. Next, I'd like to make sure that my group headers appear at the top of each page of the report, because currently, if I switch to the next page, you'll see my group header disappears. So, by default, group headers are designed to show themselves only on the first page of the group. One other quick thing I'd like to sort out as well is to make sure that my groups don't randomly begin themselves at any point on a page. So as here, at the end of the U group, I start the PG group, even though there's only one space for one row in that group. I'm going to make sure that each certificate begins a brand new page. So let's fix that part first. If we switch back to the design view, I'm going to start by selecting the certificate ID group in the Groups panel, and then over in the Properties window, expand the Group section, followed by the Page Break section. I'm then going to set the page break location to be between each instance of a group, like so. And having done that, if I quickly run the report, we'll see that if I go to page 3 and get down to the very bottom, the PG group does not appear. It now appears at the top of its own new page. Okay. Next, let's make sure that these row headers, these group headers, appear at the top of each page of the report. Back to the design view. To do this, I'm going to expand my Groups panel to show it in advanced mode, so using the drop-down arrow in the top right-hand corner of the Groups panel. And that exposes all these static items which correspond to the rows of the group header. If I select the top static item which corresponds to the cell showing the certificate name, I can use the Repeat on New Page property in the Properties window, set that to true, and that row will appear at the top of each page. And you might be thinking at this point, aha, we've solved our problem. If I can leave that static item visible on each page, but leave that one not visible on each page, leave that set to false, then we've accomplished our goal, except that sadly you can't do it that way. If I run the report, I'll get an error message. I can't change or have different values for the Repeat on New Page property for the 3 different rows in the group header. They've either all got to be on or all got to be off. So back in the design view, I've got to change the second static item to Repeat on New Page true, and then the third static item also to true. Once I've done that, if I run the report, you can see that as I navigate between the different pages, the group headers remain visible, and I start each new group at the top of a new page. So we're getting somewhere now. Next, I'd like to show how you can identify which page of the report you're on by adding a page header to the report. So right-clicking somewhere away from the body of the report, we can choose to add a page header. And in there we can insert some built-in fields to show both the current page number and the total number of pages. Now it's quite important we distinguish in this case between the overall page number and overall total pages and page number and total pages. The overall page numbers refer to, as you'd expect, the total number of pages in the entire report. We want to limit this to find just the page number within each group. So I'm going to start by dragging the page number built-in field into the page header, and then I'm going to add a bit of extra text around the outside of that. I'm going to say, write the word page in front of page number, and then after page number I'll write the word of, and then I can drag in the total pages built-in field. Just doing a bit of tidying up with the formatting, I'll make it the same width as my table, and I'm going to just collapse the size of the group header there as well. Add some basic formatting to the background colour and the font colour. Make the font bold as well. And then just quickly change the font to match the rest. Okay, so if I run the report now, we'll see page numbers. It's not quite worked the way I want just yet. There's one more thing we need to change. So you'll see at the moment it's showing page 1 of 30. So it's essentially showing the same as the overall total pages. And you'll see as I navigate between the groups, the page numbering doesn't reset either, it just continually increments. So to fix that, back in the design view, I'm going to select my certificate ID group in the Groups panel, and again in the Properties window, in the Group section, head to the Page Break section and choose to reset page number. So I'm going to set that to true, so that means that when you begin a new group, the page numbering begins again. So having done that, if we run the report, you can now see page 1 of 4, and then when I get to the end of the U group, get to the PG group, the page numbering resets and starts again. So at this point, you might be thinking that we have our way in to controlling the visibility of that row in the group header. If we can detect the page number within a group, we could use that to conditionally change the hidden property of that row. If the page number is greater than 2, then we can just make that hidden. Sadly, that doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because you can't access the page number in an expression outside of the page header or the page footer. Just to quickly show that that's the case, I'm going to head back to my table in Design View, insert a new column to the right-hand side, and in the group header, let's try to write an expression that shows that built-in page number property. If I go to the expression builder, head to built-in fields, and I insert the page number property, when I click OK and then run the report, I get yet another error. And I can't run this because I'm not allowed to access page number outside of the header or the footer. So that doesn't work. Now, it's worthwhile quickly mentioning that in trying to solve this problem, I did resort to Google, as it turns out. And there are several suggestions if you do Google for this problem that involve writing some custom functions in the code view of your report. So back in the design view, if I right-click around the border of the report and choose to view its properties, you can view the code page to write your own custom visualbasic.net functions. I tried a few of those out and I couldn't get any of them to work, so hence the reason I'm showing you the technique that I did get to work. It may be a version-specific thing, but if you wanted to try any of those out, you'll quickly and easily find those with a quick Google search. Anyway, here's the approach we're going to take. I'm going to base this on the result of the RowNumber function rather than the PageNumber function. RowNumber is a function that I can use within the body of my report. So I'm going to get rid of my PageNumber expression from that cell, and then I'm going to head to the detail row of my table and right-click into that cell and choose Expression. In the Common Functions category, I can find Miscellaneous and then RowNumber. I'll double-click to insert that. The RowNumber function requires a reference to a scope, as you can see from the example there. And the scope that I want to reset my row numbers within is within my certificate ID group, as shown here. So in some double quotes, I can refer to certificate ID, being very careful to spell it correctly. And then that's what my expression looks like. Having done that, if I hit OK, and then preview my report, I'll see that I get the row number for each row in the table, and when I get to the end of a group, that row number resets for the beginning of the next group. So that sounds like a new way in. If I can detect the value of the row number, i.e. the first row number on the page, then I can check if that's greater than 1, and if it's greater than 1, I can then hide that row in the header. That's a little bit more tricky than you might expect as well. If I head back to the design view and I just write that exact same expression, in fact I'm just going to quickly copy and paste the expression as I know that one works. If I try to drop that in the page header, the group header, when I run the report again, sadly, when I use the row number in a header, it just gives me the same value as the total number of rows in that group. So I can't, sadly, use that in quite the way that I want to detect if I'm on the first page. The trick to making this work isn't to use the RowNumber function in the group header, but rather to write an expression which refers to the value calculated by the RowNumber function in this specific text box. To help out with that, we're going to give that text box a more sensible name than its current name of text box 41 in my case. So with that text box selected, in the Properties window, you can scroll down to find the Name property. And I'm going to change its name to something a bit more obvious. I'm going to call it Group Row Number. And I'm just going to quickly copy that to the clipboard as well, because I'll need to refer to that in a moment. When I've renamed an object, and even if you don't rename an object, you can still refer to them, you can use a property, or a collection I should say, called ReportItems to refer directly to objects on a page. So I'm going to head back to the expression in my group header, and then, rather than using the RowNumber function, I'm going to refer to ReportItems followed by an exclamation mark. I'm then going to paste in the name of the text box that I created, and then I want to reference the value property of that text box. So that's the full expression there. Once I've done that, if I hit OK, and then run the report again, what we'll see is that on each page, referring to the value of that text box refers to the value of the first instance of that text box in the collection. So as I head to the next page, you'll see it's just showing me the number of the first text box on the page. So that means we can now successfully test if the result of that is greater than 1, we know we're not on the first page of a group. So to tie all of this together, we can use the result we've just returned to conditionally control the visibility of this header row. And we're going to do this by setting an expression for the hidden property. You do have to be ever so slightly careful about which object's hidden property you assign this to, however. If I just quickly switch back to the design view, if I'm trying to hide this row in the table, you might think that you can highlight the entire row, and then in the properties window, find the hidden property right down the bottom there. We will use an expression in a moment, but just temporarily, I'm going to use the true option to make that row hidden. The slightly annoying thing is that Report Builder takes a fairly pedantic approach to achieving what you've just asked it to achieve, which is to make that row invisible. Yes, technically it does do that, but it also leaves the space left behind still visible. Not quite what I wanted. So back in the design view, I'm going to reset that property back to false. So with that row selected, set the hidden property back to false. And then if I did the same thing for the corresponding static group member in the groups panel, so if I select that static item, you see it corresponds to that row in the table. If I set its hidden property to true, then when we run the report, it both hides it and it collapses the white space as well. So back to the design view. I'm going to head back to the expression in that cell in the group header. I'm going to copy that to avoid accidentally mistyping it the next time. And then if I head back to the static member in the groups panel, and then go to the hidden property and choose expression. So I'm going to paste in the expression I've just written, and I want this expression to return true when the result of that is greater than 1. So it's as simple as doing that. When the value of that text box is greater than 1, the hidden property will be true. So if I hit OK at that point, and I run the report, we'll find that on the first page of the universal group, I've got that header row. As soon as I navigate to the next page, it's hidden. And it remains hidden until I reach the first page of the next group, when it becomes visible again. The final step would involve just hiding this final column. You don't need to see it. So back in the design view, again, you've got a choice. You can either hide the table column there by physically selecting the column. Doesn't really matter too much in this example, as it turns out, because it's the last column of the table. But just in case you were going to add more columns to the table later, it's better to use the static group member, this time in the column groups area. So with that static item selected, I can head to the hidden property in the properties window and set that to true. No reason to control that conditionally. So if I run the report one more time, there we can see the group header appears in full on the first page of a group, and then in a truncated fashion on each other page of the group. So hopefully that's enough to satisfy the question. If you've got any questions about that, then please do feel free to ask them in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.